Hey, what's up? It's Spaz the Magician, and welcome to the very first official episode of me building a computer and then using that to teach a magic lesson. For those of you who are not familiar with what's going on, please go back and watch the introduction. It will explain everything, and then come back and watch this. For those of you that already know, I'm just going to continue on. This segment involves pricing. As you know, in the introduction, I said I'm going to list out every computer component that I have, and this includes accessories, parts that I felt were needed but not really crucial, things like that. And how I did this is I've basically segmented this off into 4 different sections. I've written a component on cards, and then I've written the price for that component on the back of this. I'm not showing you this yet. And then I put a total on another card for all the pieces in that segment. And this again has 4 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, because I'm going to first show you the grand total, because I want to throw a shock value into this to show you how much this was. And then I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning and break down and lead up to what came up to this total. So let me begin. The entire total amount for all the accessories I have, the monitor, things like that I'll be going over and showing you, is $4,309. That's a lot of money. Now, I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. And now I'm going to go over exactly where this figure came from. I know you know it came from the parts, but that's not what I mean. This figure was gathered over a 6 or 7 year period of time. That's the total amount of everything I've gotten. So let me start with the first pile here. Before I go into the first pile, I just forgot one thing. The reason why I showed you this is because this is a lot of money. And this is because if any trick I do or anything I do, it has quality put into it, meaning I actually invested money into this, which winds up giving me a product that lasts a very long time because I decided to put a little bit of money into it. So when you're doing tricks or when you're doing magic or anything else, again, the reason why my stuff is so basically perfect is because of the amount of time and effort and quality and money I put into it. This is all the behind the scenes stuff. So let me start off with section 1. So here is keyboard, an Xbox One controller. It's an original. I play video games. And I got a Samsung 1 terabyte drive. That was the drive you saw in there that I said I had basically had over for 10 years. So this gives you an indication of when I grabbed these pieces. And I also have a PowerA charging station, which I'll get into in a minute. Now, the Dell keyboard, I've gone through several of these, but this one was free because I was cleaning out an old business and there was a keyboard that they didn't let me have, so that didn't cost me any money. But I've literally had the same keyboard for over 5 years. Now, since I play video games, the Xbox One controller, I've gone through several of those. I've tried originally getting wired ones, but I realized that batteries were costing money, and on top of that, I was running the cords over. Now, the Xbox One controller I have, the cord in the back, basically the mechanism that holds the port in the back broke. So it's still usable, I just can't plug it in really and have it work because I have to wiggle the cord. That led me into looking into a rechargeable battery that is, you put the battery pack in the back of the controller, and then you sit it on this power station. I'm going to show you all of this put together. But my point is I basically played games, and so I needed a way to have the controller. I still have these. These were bought over 10 years ago. So basically these are out of print. So the keyboard was free. The Xbox controller, this is an original, was $70. The power charging station was $20. Now, when you look at how many batteries I was buying, or the battery charger, everything else, you would wind up spending well over more than $20 on batteries. So this literally saves you money in the first place. So again, I started looking for ways to retain and preserve the stuff that I was doing. Now, this is the most expensive part on here. It's the 1 terabyte Evo. Now, what's interesting about this, and this also falls into the rest of the categories of the pricing, is that I purchased this drive when SSDs were first coming out, meaning a 1 terabyte drive, for the most part, was almost $700. I got lucky in finding Best Buy had a sale on it. So some of these components I actually grabbed on Cyber Monday. So what happened here is I was able to get a 1 terabyte SSD, which was very good for its time frame on the price, for $350. And just one thing about all these prices, I kind of rounded them up for taxes. So this is slightly more than it actually was, but I've lowered the value on some of the other ones, so it basically balances it off, so roughly around the same amount. But this is roughly around $350 or something like that. So the entire total for this pile for 10 years ago is $440. Now, this was 10 years ago. I still have all of these things. All of them. They're still actually plugged into my computer now. The batteries and the cord, everything else, wound up saving me a lot of money in this end. And on top of that, because I take care of it and I clean my stuff, it lasted over 10 years. The one thing I want to mention about SSDs is they have a lifespan because they're not a normal hard drive. So what happens here is the SSDs will actually terminate themselves after a while, meaning they just wear out because you can only do so much with it. It will break. That's just what happens to them. But I've had this thing, they basically have a shelf life of 10 years. I've had this thing over 10 years. And that's about it. So this drive is still working. It's what's in my computer now. But I'm expecting it to go within the next year or two. Okay, so that brings me to pile 2. Okay, so this, by the way, the order in which I explain these in is the order I got them in. Same thing with this. So I've gone through several mouse. I'm probably going to go through it again. But this is just a regular generic wired mouse. The keyboard's wired too. I don't use anything wireless. So again, the battery issue. So this is just a generic mouse. That was $9. I can still go out and get these for like $7. And if this mouse breaks, I'm going to go get another $7 one. There's no reason for me, at least I don't understand the draw to having a $40 mouse. It's a mouse, you plug it in, it works. What I don't understand this point of this wireless stuff. All right, so I actually started doing stuff online through Omega, and I needed a webcam. So I first got introduced to this. So I was looking at the time webcams. And pretty much I needed something cheap, nothing major. This turned out, I got a Logitech at the time. This was at the time it was decent. It's okay now, but at the time it was decent. 720 HD webcam. Kid you not, $20. I didn't need a $40 one and $50 one. I was looking at these prices and they're ridiculous. So then, again, I had mentioned Cyber Monday. I was looking to get a 4K monitor. So I actually did some searching. I targeted one on Best Buy. This monitor is now discontinued. Samsung doesn't even make it anymore. This is the actual model. And I wanted one that was 28 inches. I wanted one that dealt with 4K because I had a 1080p monitor, which is now my wife has. And then I wanted it 28 inches, which seemed to be perfect for me, and that's the actual name and model. Now, this was a 4K monitor. Now, at the time I got this pile, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And this monitor, when I got it, was on a Cyber Monday from Black Friday. $327. I remember the price exactly. The total for this is $356. So far, over the course of 3 years, I had basically spent $700. I'm rounding that up. So as you can see, this was spread out. It wasn't just piled all at once because I could have done this, but I was waiting for the deals that I needed to do and smart pricing. That brings me to the point on the third pile. Okay, so this third pile happened recently, and there's a story behind the video card here. Now, I've gone through several mouse pads, but these are just generic. So Basically, I got this about a year and a half to 2 years ago. This pile here. No, sorry, that's not true. I got it last year. Sorry, my mistake. It's been within a year. The generic mouse pads are like $5. I'm going to go through them again and again and again. But the way I actually make my magic mats it's on my YouTube channel, I can actually use those to actually create mouse pads. So theoretically, I don't need to buy one. All right, so now that brings me to this. This pile I purchased because I had, if you go on my YouTube channel, on the Magic channel here, you'll see that I won a talent show and I won $10,000. So I had a little bit of extra money, and that's when I purchased a new graphics card. Since I purchased a new graphics card, I knew I was going to need a new power supply, so I started looking into what would be the best course of action, because these cards and this power supply were basically just coming out at the time. They were new on the market. So what I did was I happened to look at that, and it's important for you to understand I got a Corsair for something else that happened later, which I'll get to this pile in a minute. All right, so this is Corsair. And I was looking at the general consensus online when you got an NVIDIA RTX 3090 Ti was that you needed a minimal of a 1,000 watt power supply. And that's basically what I did. So I started looking at the 1,000 watts, and there were basically two models that people were choosing, and I went with this one because I dealt with Corsair in the past, and I like it. So that brings me to, I just got anti-blue light glasses. I got these at Best Buy. I got this at Best Buy. These all basically came from Best Buy. This I think, came from Walmart or something like that. My wife picked it up for me somewhere. But anyway, these all came from Best Buy. Now, what happened with this is the most expensive component on a computer. It's absurd what NVIDIA did. And by the way, this is no longer being sold by NVIDIA, or at least Best Buy. You're going to shit when you see this. That is actually the price on the graphic card. It's $1,730. That's how much I paid for it with tax. Now, I'm going to let you in on something. I never, ever, ever, since the entire history of building a computer, would ever condone buying that. Ever. The only reason I did that was because I had the money from the talent show. Now, when I got, there's nothing that's going to use the power of this card at all for a while. Like, this card is so overpowered, it's ridiculous. And so, when I did that, I had been planning for the future. I'll explain it in a minute. But keep that in mind, and then keep the Corsair in mind, because I got both of these at the same time. So, bought one, bought the other. It was a chore trying to find this. I had to go to two different stores, and they said one didn't have it in stock, one did have it in stock. I went there, they said it wasn't there. So then out of sheer coincidence, just sheer curiosity, I went to the store that said it had it listed, which another store I was in said it wasn't in stock. I just happened to go there and just tried it. Sure enough, they brought it out, and that's how I got this. Otherwise, I would never have had this. And so, again, without the talent show, I never would have purchased it. But that was the story behind that. So I got lucky in finding that. That brings me to this part here. I got lucky with this, which, again, I'll get to that because that has to do with this pile here. All right, so anyway, this Corsair, relatively decent for a power supply, is $180. Now, these anti-blue glasses, since I play a lot of games and I stare at the screen, I had done an eye exam a while ago where I would always wear sunglasses. I would wear sunglasses when I played games or when I looked at the computer because I'd be on there for a while. And so I knew I was trying to protect my eyes. But when I went to get my eyes checked, the optometrist said it's actually the blue light in there, and that stuck with me. So when I had the money, I got myself some anti-blue glasses. I looked at the prices and that, and so I settled on this. It's Best Buy, $54. So the total amount for this pile is $1,969, and that is because that thing is the most ridiculous piece of hardware in any computer. There is literally no reason for anything to be that expensive. But again, that's just how it came about. Okay, so taking all that into account, I knew by getting this, I was planning for the future what has to do with this. This got lucky. So let me get the fourth pile out here. Okay, so there's a lot of components in this last one. So far, it's been about 4 or 5 years of gathering up all of these. Okay? Now, we come to this tax season. So, due to understanding how to handle money, I'm going to explain to you how this is set up and where the luck comes into play on this one. Okay, so in process of doing my research, this all started with the motherboard. For years, when I lived in Massachusetts, I had a gentleman that would build my computers, and I got to have a very good business relationship with him. Now, what I'm about to tell you is important as far as establishing a baseline for a business. The basic way things work when I do them is once you establish a baseline with a business person, and that business person has never let you down, that is the person you want to stay with. So when I was building my computers, just like when I'm getting my magic parts, I find a place that has quality stuff, then I stick with it. Even though you may wind up spending a little bit of money, it winds up benefiting you in the end, because not only does this stuff last longer, but because of what it is, you're going to have a much higher quality product in the end. So let me begin by explaining what I did with this, because there's stories with this, which I'll do in another episode because this is just dragging on. But pretty much, I'll get into everything that I did with this in the next episode. So I just want to go over the prices with this. So this right here is an Asus TUF Gaming Z690 plus Wi-Fi DDR5 motherboard. This was $198. This is the CPU I got, which is Central Processing Unit. It's an Intel i9 13900K CPU. This is the most expensive thing in this pile, and it was $585. This is the cooling unit I had for the processor, which goes into the motherboard, and it's 240, which means it's 240 millimeter AIO all-in-one cooler. It's made by Arctic. That I got for $100. Keeping in mind, I'm rounding these figures up. All right, then I got the Renegade RAM, which is Renegade Silver. It's DDR5 RAM because you need it to go into the motherboard or it won't work. And it's 32 gigs, and it runs at 6400 mAh, the speed on that. And that was $185 for two 16 gig sticks. These are the fans. I had grabbed 5 of them. They run at 3,000 RPMs. They're 120, which means they're 120 millimeter, which means they're one fan size on the cooler, because the cooler is 240 millimeters. So 2 of these equal 1 of those. So anyway, as far as the radiator goes, meaning I'll have to explain that afterwards. So these 5 fans, I actually only wound up using 4 of them. I have an extra one. But these 5 fans are basically $36 each, and 5 of them cost $180. This is a Lamley anti-sag bracket. What this does is this goes up against underneath the graphics card, because the graphics card, the way it plugs into the board, it hangs sideways, and it can actually wobble, and you can break your components. So this was a component that kind of wasn't needed, but I wanted to take a precaution on it to keep the graphics card that I have, because those things weigh a ton. So this is what I got for this, and this was about $27. It's a little bit expensive, but the company Lamley is really one of the only people that make a good quality version of it. Okay, this is a mess. This is basically the last piece I got from my computer, because I kind of found it out by accident, which I'm going to go over and explain all of this in the next segment. But this is the Thermalright LGA 1700. Now, 1700 is the actual socket that fits into the motherboard. 1,700 are basically the amount of pins that connect that little processing chip that you put into the motherboard. It has 1,700 pins, 1,700 pins. It's called the bend correction frame. And for some reason, gray, even though they do the exact same thing, gray was the cheapest version of it, and that was about $18. That was actually necessary. Again, I'll go over that in the next next segment. All right, so here is the actual hard drive I got. In the video, I went over the components. I forgot to mention that they were 1 terabyte hard drives. Now, I was originally going to get a 2 terabyte, but I'll explain why I got a 1 terabyte in the next segment. But this is a Kingston Fury Renegade 1 terabyte Gen 4, that's important, NVMe SSD. Now, this was $95. All right. This is why I said I got lucky with the Corsair power supply. It's because of this component right here. Again, I'm going to go over all this stuff in the next segment about the pieces, but I just wanted to get to keep in mind it was this component here on why I said I got lucky picking the Corsair power supply. I didn't just do it, I did it because of that, but this just happened to fall into place. This was sheer coincidence that this happened. So anyway, this is basically a 12-pin PSU power supply. It goes to the power supply cord. It's basically for the graphics card. Again, I'll go over that in a minute. I'll go over that in the next segment. So anyway, $21. Now, this also has to do with the pricing, and it's important for you to understand that this is the case that I picked was an NZXT H7 Flow. I was trying to go after the NZXT H9 Flow, but it's been out of stock everywhere, and it's almost like it was released in limited quantities. But that being out of stock wound up actually benefiting me for a reason. Again, this kind of just fell into place, but I kind of tweaked my pricing on what I was getting, and again, I'll go over that in the next segment. But this was a case, basically $135 with tax. Now, the entire total for this section here, before I show you that total, I'm sure you can deduce the total at this point, but I want to point, before I flip this over, if you were to go out and purchase all of this, just this, I calculated it up on various sites, it's literally over $4,000. I don't understand why it's that expensive considering I purchased all of it for $1,500. Again, I'm going to go over, I keep repeating this, sorry, but I'll go over this in the next segment because people are not aware that you can get this stuff for this cheap. Now, again, this came out of tax season. And basically, I would actually deduct this from this because how I was able to pull this off is that in my taxes, when my wife and I's taxes, we have a credit card and we have a credit card and a bank account. So what I did was I had my wife pay off the credit card, and then I used the credit card to purchase this. The credit card can be paid off $100 in a month, so that's going to be being paid off. So I don't actually count this as part of this. So in retrospect, yes, I'm paying for this, but I'm kind of doing it in a weird way. So it's not, I didn't buy this outright with the cash. This was bought with the cash from the taxes. This was bought with the credit card. So in a sense, yes, you can say the credit card was paid for, but if I had paid off the credit card and then purchased this on top of that, the pricing on this would have been messed up. But that's why I was coming out with conserving money, because I don't consider this as part of this purchase on what I used to purchase it. I hope you can follow what I'm saying here. So if you actually deduct this from this total, it's literally under $1,100. It's actually less than that. It's about $900. I got all of this for $900. But if you were to purchase this outright, if you can add it up and go to a couple stores, websites, it's literally over $4,000. I don't understand that. So again, it's about where I divvied my money up and things like that. So the cash was never touched for this. I just want to reiterate that. This was bought with the credit card. Our taxes paid for this, like the cash for this, which is basically $900, and then the credit card, because we both used that. But then I used the credit card to pay for this. So this was not included with that. So reality, I'm paying that off, but in doing it over sections. So it didn't disrupt our cash flow or our amount of cash as far as the taxes go. Because again, if I had paid for all of this plus that, we would have less money in tax right now. Like we would have less money to spend because we have it saved. So this is manageable. So that's how I did that. So all in all, over a 5 or 6 year period of time, $4,309 is what has been paid toward all of this. It took me 7 years to build this computer. So this is now going to last me for a minimal of 10 years. I won't have to change the parts of this. So one last time, I'll go over that in the next segment, which is the pieces and everything else. But I just wanted to get the pricing out of the way because that's important because, as I said at the beginning, the reason my tricks and everything else are so good is because, like building a computer, I put time, money, and effort into quality parts that are going to last me, and then I take care of them. That's it. So that's it for pricing. Stay tuned for the next episode. I have no idea what the hell I'm going to name it, but it'll be up when I put it up. So I'm going to try to get to that in the next couple of days. So until then, Spaz Magician signing out. Take care.